Hello. Welcome everybody. My name's Jazz Olak and I am the Vice Chair of Leeds for Europe. So a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for giving up some of your afternoon and evening to join us today and mark this event. So 5 years on from the original referendum. Indeed. So just before I carry on with what I'd like to say to kick off the event, just a little bit of housekeeping because of COVID regulations. We want to stay as COVID safe as possible, so it's great to see that people are social distancing. We do have a station here where there's hand sanitizer, and if anybody would like to avail themselves of a mask, that's also available. We would encourage everybody to wear their masks wherever possible. If you've come in specific groups, it's probably a good idea to stay in those groups and keep socially distanced. Our event will go on to just around 7 p.m, so I expect people to arrive and others to leave. I don't expect necessarily everybody will be staying the duration, but yeah, just try and keep as safe as you possibly can. And finally, the rest of we do expect more people. Our chair will be arriving a little bit later, and I'm sure he'll want to have a few words as well. So, as I said, it's 5 years on from the referendum. So 5 years on from that referendum, which changed the course of our country, created upheaval for many, and changed lives and livelihoods. Where once we were a trusted nation, had a seat at the top table, now we are mistrusted when it comes to meeting our obligations under international law. We are on the international fringes, marginalised at the recent G7 meet, and the direction of travel in our domestic politics is frankly horrifying. A lot of what has unfolded since Brexit happened was predicted. It was unfortunately labelled Project Fear. And yet here we are, 5 years on, and most of it now is very much project reality. Brexit isn't working. Brexit isn't working for our fishing industry, our farmers, our musicians, artists and freelancers, our exporters and importers, our research and science sector, our haulage companies, our young people, and threatening the peace in Northern Ireland, and indeed the union of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Northern Ireland as well. Quite a feat, you might say. In fact, it may be quicker to name those for whom it is working. Die-hard Brexiters in this vote leave government who wish to see only what they want to see from an ideological point of view. The facts are clear though. The promised trade deals on a global level have yet to be delivered. We have rolled over some deals, which we had when we were in the EU. However, some of those have been on worse terms than those we had as part of the EU. Latest figures from HMRC data show that there's been a £2 billion reduction in food and drink exports to the EU. Sale of dairy products has plummeted 90% in the first quarter of 2021. The sector has said that this drop shows structural rather than teething problems with our departure from the EU. That is pretty damning to everyone other than the most blinkered Brexit advocates. Dominic Gowdy, who's head of the international trade at the Food and Drink Federation, said, "The loss of 2 billion of exports to the EU is a disaster for our industry and is a very clear indication of the scale of losses that UK manufacturers face in the long term due to new trade barriers with the EU." Well done, Brexiters. More recently, there have been press reports of Tesco having to destroy 50 tonnes of food every week due to the driver shortage. The Road Haulage Association has warned that we have a deficit of approximately 100,000 drivers, and this will be catastrophic for our supply chains. Then there is the mountain of bureaucracy and red tape that so many exporters face, meaning many small entrepreneurs have ceased exporting to the EU as it is no longer viable for them. This again has been well documented by individuals like the wine merchant Daniel Lambert, who said this of his business: "I have been faced with the largest threat to its future since it began in 1992. This is Brexit." And he proceeded to highlight in detail the additional paperwork and cost he has incurred and the complete lack of preparation by the government or any meaningful support for businesses. This is all before we even mention the potential threat to our currently high animal welfare and food standards. Farmers have highlighted the threat of the Australian deal, which they believe will undermine them and price their produce out of the market. Australia has a terrible record on animal welfare, and there's also the environmental impact of importing from so far away rather than on our doorstep. Devastating as all this economic damage is, for me, the personal cost of Brexit has always been the most poignant, and one I believe we need to highlight more. Personal, emotional stories resonate really well with people. There are many ways in which lives have been made harder, and we will hear from a number of speakers today of their personal experiences of these new hurdles. People's identities have been shaken. How they see themselves through the eyes of a country which now, to many more, seems a hostile environment. I count myself amongst this number. Before Brexit was even invented, I had seen discrimination and microaggressions through how my parents have been treated over the years. Then, of course, came the Windrush scandal. The Vote Leave win horrified me, as I could see how this environment would become many folds worse and how many more people would be sucked into it and become targets. This time, Europeans. This to me is one of the most abhorrent outcomes of Brexit. The countless families who have made lives here and Brits who have made lives in other European countries. Suddenly their lives have been thrown into turmoil and they didn't even get a say. As I feared, they have faced direct racism and discrimination. The latter, I believe, is a direct consequence of the rhetoric of ministers and some politicians who have emboldened and legitimised the views of racists. I feel deeply ashamed that this has happened. The looming deadline for the end of June is fast approaching, with many EU citizens in the UK facing dire consequences if they do not get their settled status application sorted. Only today in the press, before coming here, I read of potential enforcement notices being sent out to essentially people who are our friends and our neighbours. Well, we're here to say no, not in our name. Hate crime has also increased, and I, on a personal level, have never before felt the level of hostility and outright racism that I have faced since the Brexit vote. My right to have an opinion has been challenged repeatedly on street stalls. The usual lead-in to this being the question, were you born here? As it happens, I was born here, but that's neither here nor there. Every person has the right to be valued as a human being. Their opinions are valid regardless of where they were born. I don't recognise this country. The current values it projects on the world stage appall me. However, I will never give up fighting for a more equal and outward-looking society. A country which understands its own history, its obligations on the world stage, and actually looks to play a full and active role treating other countries with the respect it would like for itself. No more British exceptionalism. To that end, I and all my friends in Leeds for Europe will continue to fight for us to rejoin the EU and take an active role. There are many things that we need to tackle in our democracy here in the UK to make that journey towards rejoining a reality. But we shall save that for another day. Today we highlight all the ways in which Brexit isn't working.